is NPR.
And this is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 with Samar and Ahmed Bedier. On today's show, we're going to be speaking about Governor Ron DeSantis' unprecedented executive order designating a Muslim organization, America's largest civil rights organization, as a terrorist organization. And what is the fallout from that? Is that even legal? Is it constitutional? And the rise of Islamophobia across the country. Are you noticing it? Because Samar and I are. So that, and maybe we can get to also some phone calls. This is True Talk on WMNF. We'll be right back. Welcome back to True Talk on WMNF 88.5 with Ahmed and Samar. Samar, were you shocked by the news this week that Ron DeSantis has designated CARE as a designated Muslim or designated foreign terrorist organization? This is following the example of Greg Abbott in Texas recently. I'm not sure if this is going to be copied by other Republican states or Republican-led states across the country to designate CARE, which is America's largest Muslim civil rights organization. It's like designated the NAACP, designating them as somehow a foreign terrorist organization, which the governors don't seem to have the power to do. So were you surprised by it? And
Assalamu alaikum, my co-host, and greetings to all our listeners, whether in Tampa or on cyberspace, as they say. Ahmed, I was, of course, extremely shocked when it happened initially, I think in Texas. But I thought, this could not happen here, especially that CARE in Florida has extremely good relations with so many different groups and with the government. And I remember initially after September 11, actually the FBI came and talked to CARE officers and people and offices and was interested in creating channels of communication, because I myself was present at one of these meetings trying to represent our area that doesn't have any CARE offices. So there was the government was interested in having a conversation with mosques, with such organizations. But what alarms me, Ahmed, is that in the psyche of people, it might be easy to designate an Islamic kind of organization, American Islamic organization, as a terrorist organization. But I have a feeling this is just a first step to start and stop any organizations in America that are pro-Palestine or work for Palestinian causes. And that's where I feel this is going. I don't know if I'm right or not. I don't know if you agree with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, CARE is not necessarily a Palestinian organization, or however, what they do is they defend the rights of Muslims and others, not just Muslims, but others as well, to speak out against the Israeli occupation. They've done that for years. Because this is one of the things. It's like Muslims, of course, are not a monolith. They don't all care only about the same issues, but Palestine happens to be a common denominator, an issue that Muslims around the world care about. And one of which is it's part of their religious faith. The Holy Mosque in Jerusalem is the third holiest site in Islam, and it's a sanctuary and had been under Muslim leadership for centuries. And it wasn't until the British, after World War I, and the British were able to occupy that land, and they decided to disperse it to usher in a migration of European Jews to that land with, the Balfour Declaration supporting a Zionist state, a Jewish state that did not exist in that area and had never existed prior to that. Sure, Jewish communities in ancient times, I'm talking, around the times of the ancient Egyptians and Byzantine, there were Jewish communities that were there historically, but nothing in the past, in hundreds of years, if not a few thousand years, a couple of thousand years, they haven't. But Jewish communities, Arab Jewish communities, have existed all the entire time. They've lived there peacefully, coexisted with Muslims. So, because a lot of times you hear Trump saying that, this conflict goes back thousands of years, and he's finally has the peace deal that has resolved a conflict from thousands of years ago. But that's not true. This conflict is less than 100 years old, and it's starts with the establishment of the Israeli state, a state that did not exist and was forced on an indigenous population that's there. So a lot of Muslims have grown up and been around to criticize what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, and somehow, because, especially in the United States, where Muslim Americans, these are Americans who happen to be Muslim, they care about the injustice that's happening, they're speaking out about it, and CARE has been at the forefront to defend Muslims and even others' rights to criticize and to criticize Israeli policy and American policy towards that area. And I think you're right that they want to silence those voices, and they're going after CARE in a big way.
In spite of the fact that, for instance, CARE does not deal only with Arab-Israeli conflict.
Yeah.
Most of the time, for instance, but let's just look at the very recent history. For instance, CARE was interested in Florida with the case of Saifullah, who was an American born in the U.S. of Palestinian descent and was beaten to death by settlers in the area called Al-Mazra in the West Bank. So yes, of course they have to deal with it, whether they like it or not. He's an American citizen. His uncle lives in Southwest Florida. The father and Saifullah were living in Tampa, and actually Saifullah, God bless his soul, Allah yarhamu, had an ice cream shop in Tampa. So, of course, CARE has to deal with this case and deal with his murder that happened in cold blood. And and half of it was on footage, on camera. And then the arrest of his cousin, who I think was 16 years old. His name, I think, is Ahmed. He's also American. Of course, CARE finds itself involved with dealing with issues related to Americans and American Muslims because they get killed and murdered in Israel. But of course, they do with a lot of other issues.
Most of their issues, Samar, are domestic. They deal with discrimination, people that are fired from their job because they are Muslim, or people that are not able to rent housing, or they're denied services at restaurants or hotels because they're Muslim. Using the Civil Rights Act, things to speak out against discrimination and racism. I know this firsthand because as a disclaimer, years ago I worked for CARE. And I left in 2008 there were, relations with law enforcement, with government officials. It was ongoing because this was an organization that represented the rights of Muslim Americans, not different than the NAACP, not different than other civil rights and human rights organization that represents minority groups. And this is part of the American Constitution, American law, to be able to establish organizations that represent you. And because you know what, the law doesn't speak for itself. We have a constitution, we have the rule, we have laws on the books, but you need organizations and you need lawyers and you need advocates to be able to advocate for those laws. Those laws don't speak for themselves. I think even the ACLU says that, they defend the Constitution because the Constitution can't defend itself. It's on paper, but it takes people to actually stand up and defend these rights. And never before, but even when I was with CARE back then, it was always the target of Israeli groups. No one hated CARE more than pro-Israel groups because they saw that this was an effective organization that is representing, that is vocal, that responds rapidly, that is able to confront some of these different issues. And when you're trying to take people's land, when you're trying to carry out an occupation or carry out different invasions and wars, because, October 7th wasn't the first, Nakba or catastrophe or genocide that Israel carried out in the Palestinian lands. And it wasn't the first injustice. It was, post October 7th. And so they've been the target of that. And one of the biggest thinkers of pro-Zionist organizations in America is a guy named Daniel Pipes. Before a lot of these organizations are in the scene and figures and individuals are in the scene, way before Ted Cruz and all these people that speak for Israel, Daniel Pipes is one of the original thinkers, or in America, and advocates for Zionism. And he said years ago, I think in the 90s, he warned Jewish donors and Jewish leaders. He said the enfranchisement of Muslims in America, meaning that as Muslims become more politically enfranchised in society here, will mean the end of the Jewish golden age in America. And he was basically saying the more Muslims become empowered, and I'll try to find this because people may not believe it, that he's been saying this for decades, that basically warning the more empowered Muslims are in America, it spells bad news for the Israeli state. Why is that? Because as Muslims become more politically involved, they're going to demand from their politicians and from their leaders to change policy on Israel. And you know what? It's not just Muslims now. Now it's actually everybody. The majority of Americans are demanding and asking for a different policy towards Israel, and something that's more, and because more and more Americans are sympathizing with the Palestinians.
Actually, I know the name Daniel Pipes very well because when I was teaching Ahmed at USF, it was a few years after he started a group to monitor professors all over the USA, and he would have students secretly taping professors to see who can say what about Israel and Palestine. And I'm looking here actually at his major things that he described. He talked about us as the enemy within.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is published in the New York.
When you say us, who's us?
He said, no, I'm saying, what do you mean?
You said he talks about us as the
Muslim Americans.
Oh, okay, yeah, not Palestinians, Americans that are Muslim, right?
Yeah. So, for instance, here is a quote of him in 2003. and I'm quoting here, there is no escaping the unfortunate fact that Muslim government employees in law enforcement, the military, and diplomatic corps need to be watched for connections to terrorism, as do Muslim chaplains in prisons and the armed forces. Muslim visitors and immigrants must undergo additional background checks. Mosques require a security beyond that applied to churches and temples, and that's in 2003. And he says, yes, I do support the internment of Japanese Americans in Wall.
Internment, yeah.
Yeah. And he does endorse it for and it's a model as a model for dealing with Muslims today. I mean, if we said these things about another group of cats or dogs or not even human beings, all hell will break loose. And he can say these things about his fellow American citizens because, I don't know, criticizing him would be called anti-Semitic and anti-Semitism. But if people go and Ahmed Google Daniel Pipes and Islam, I think they will be shocked at the things that he would say. For instance, in 1990, he wrote a piece, an article. It was published in 1990, and the title is "The Muslims Are Coming." The Muslims are coming. And I quote, Western European societies are unprepared for the massive immigration of brown-skinned peoples, cooking strange foods and maintaining different standards of hygiene. All immigrants being exotic customs and attitudes, bring exotic costumes and attitudes, but Muslim customs are more troublesome than most. And this is why Costco and other places are now selling shattafat. I don't know what they call them in English, but
Bidets.
bidets that we use. So this seems like a bad thing that we wash after we use the bathroom. And that
Can you connect the issue for our listeners? What do you mean?
Because he is saying brown-skinned peoples cooking strange foods that happen to be falafel, that Israel stole and claims to be its own food, hummus, which they cannot pronounce and say hummus, and I don't know, and they're all over the place. And he says we maintain different standards of hygiene, which is top-notch, Ahmed. He's trying to say that we smell.
You mean Daniel Pais is saying that Muslims have a different standard of hygiene and like
Which is
basically
excellent,
suggesting that Muslims are dirty. These are
Exactly.
are tropes. When in reality, what you're saying, it's actually the opposite. That part of the Muslim faith is to have excellent hygiene, and you're using the bidet as an example in a sarcastic way, because if people are not familiar, in Muslim, it's almost like it's actually almost like a religious practice. You can't just when you use. I mean, I don't want to get too graphic, but when you use the toilet,
maybe we should.
Yeah, when you use the toilet and you do like number two, you can't just like use toilet paper. You actually have to wash with water. And most Muslim households, almost all of them, have a bidet, a water type source, either that's built into the toilet or you add it on, that washes your rear end after using the toilet. And that unless you do that, you're not considered clean. And then, in the Arab world, they actually make fun of and just are so surprised by Western societies that don't actually use water after using the toilet. Meaning like, okay, after you use the toilet, then you have to wait until you take a shower, which would maybe the next day or at night or whenever, to actually wash yourself. No, that would be unacceptable in the Arab and Muslim culture. And by the way, I mean, I sometimes would say Arab and Muslim as if they were interchangeable. But for most people that may not know that, Arabs are not the largest, I guess, ethnic or group within Islam. Most Muslims are not Arab, and in America especially, most Arabs are actually not Muslim. Most Arabs in America are actually Christian, and the largest group of Muslims in America are actually African American Muslims. and I think followed by South Asian and then Arabs. So
And many
Muslims are very diverse. It's not just one specific group. However, because regardless of where we originate, Samar's roots are in Palestine. Mine are in Egypt. There are others are in India, Pakistan, all over the world. Islam is a world. It's like almost 2 billion people around the world. So they come from wide cultures. But one thing that we all care about as Muslims is Jerusalem, is Palestine, the mistreatment. And for the Israelis, this spells trouble because you've basically got over 1 billion people that are against what you're doing. And maybe in Israel, they don't care about the rest of the world, but they definitely care about the West, and they definitely care about America and Washington, D.C., because they figured that if America is backing them 100% with their occupation, then no one can stop them. But now in America, that's changing. And now even not just with Muslims, because they've been trying to shut down Muslims for a long time and Muslim organizations, but now even within their solid base of conservative Christians, some of them are questioning that relationship and is driving them crazy. And I think that's maybe, eventually we can get into why there's a spike in this Islamophobia and attacks on Muslims nationwide. And why is the timing now? Why is Ron DeSantis doing this now? Why did Greg Abbott do this? Why is it every time that you go onto Facebook or Twitter and you just see attack after attack, smears, warnings about Islam and Muslims conquering? It's the amount of Islamophobia is just shocking, at a shocking level I've never seen before. And this is someone I've been monitoring this for decades.
Yes, especially that you and I were here in town and active after September 11. But I think, Ahmed, I think it really, Israel knows it lost the young generation and Gen Z and even much older generation with the genocide. And there is nothing they can do when it comes to the image of Israel. And they know there is nothing they can do. There are, for instance, Ram Emanuel, if you still remember him, I think he was in the administration of Obama.
Yeah, he was, and he was also the mayor of Chicago after that.
Yes, and he just came out saying, yeah, maybe we should do what Australia did, is ban TikTok and ban social media from people who are 16 years old. Yeah, okay, good luck. And all that is to prevent the new generation from knowing the truth about Israel, as if they can hide genocide. And I think, Ahmed, it all really this amazing move towards Islamophobia with the help of people like Elon Musk, who every day tweets that Ilhan Omar is a traitor and retweets hateful tweets about Islam. And most of it is made up and not real, and sometimes AI. And his own platform says this is a generated AI and this is not true, but he keeps retweeting. So anyways, what I want to tell you, this happened after Mamdani. It turned out that he might be the new mayor of New York. It has nothing to do with Mamdani being a mayor of New York as much as is there a change happening? Because I used to tell people in the Arab world that this change in the image of Israel is not going to translate into politics, because young people still will not run for election and win. But eventually they did win in the name of Mamdani. But there are so many young people, Ahmed, and older people who are running for election, and make sure that on their Twitter feed, they say, we will not take money from AIPAC. This is a genocide. And in a few minutes, I can give you a number of names. So I think in order to face this new wave of awakening in America, their number one ally and supplier of weapons and diplomatic immunity, the only thing they could think of was Islamophobia. One last thing I want to say, Ahmed, We had an event at our mosque locally. The lady ushering the women into the table of the event to register, her name is Ashley. Blue eyes, white like Snow White, blonde but covering her hair. She's a convert. And she was waiting for her friend, I think Jennifer, or I can't remember her name, who's coming from Sarasota, a convert. So not all Muslims are immigrants or from Southeast Asia or even African American. No, many people convert to Islam on a daily basis. So what are they going to tell Ashley and Jennifer? Go home? It's like
Yeah,
100 million
right.
years.
Islam is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, but they want to use Islamophobia to weaken, to basically distract and deflect and try to remind, like you said, there's a lot of ground, there's a lot of the reputation of Israel and sympathy with Israel has shifted drastically since their genocide in Gaza. All the killing of Palestinians, children, women, men, flattening everything. It just, as arrogant as they were behaving, it hurt their image around the world, including even with some of their best allies. European nations that started recognizing the Palestinian state and announced it. This has greatly hurt their image. And like you said, it completely destroyed the image of Israel among young people. And they know that's the future, and they keep blaming it, not on their policies, not on the amount of people that they've killed and massacred and genocide they carried out, but they're blaming it somehow on social media apps and like TikTok and Facebook and others. And they specifically succeeded in taking TikTok away in America from China to now be owned by one of the biggest donors to Israeli causes and to the IDF, Larry Ellison. And Larry Ellison and his son also went about to do a takeover of Paramount, which owns CBS. And they've installed in there one of the biggest pro-Israel advocates, Barry Weiss, who was fired from the New York Times and has been basically just a one-issue person, being a mouthpiece for Israel. Now she's basically the editor of news of CBS. And CBS paid her something like over $100 million for a website that she started called The Free Press, which is not worth it. And one of the first interviews she's done was of Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, which a lot of people have comments on, but we're not going to get into it. It's kind of a bizarre interview. So all of this is happening. But, at the end of the day, like you said, with the shifting of this public opinion against Israel and pro-Israel groups, and we've had it on this show before, that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try to persuade and on ads to change the mindset of especially church-going people and Christians back to remind them that, their loyalties with Israel and the enemy is Islam. And I think that's what's happening. By the way, as we were talking just now, CARE National, I'm looking at Twitter, just announced, they announced that they filed a public records request for Governor DeSantis' communication with Israeli officials and anti-Muslim hate groups. And of course, because in Florida we have the Sunshine State laws and rules, which when those requests are done, you have to turn them over. So what communication exists between Ron DeSantis, his office, and Israel itself? Did Israel push him to carry this out? Because, Israel has been attacking CARE for a very long time. And Ron DeSantis has a long, long history of, doing
so they
things
can
for
get
Israel.
the records, Ahmed, if they file open records demand. Can they actually get
well, they're supposed to. I don't know how he's going to get around it, but if even as a citizen, you can request public records. You can request communication between city officials or between county commissioners or legislators or even the governor. Now, they may redact some of the things, I'm not sure, but if they don't respond, then they have to sue them. So it'll be a long, battle. But the issue is coming back to Ron DeSantis and his executive order, there's nothing in Florida law that says that he can actually do that. And no governor has ever designated any group as a foreign terrorist organization. That is exclusively in the power of the federal government and in the administration, and specifically in the State Department. And in fact, the Florida law basically says that designated groups that are on the list of the State Department are basically recognized as Florida. That's how you end up being on the Florida list. And but if you really read what the executive order calls for, it doesn't really do much. It basically says that government agencies cannot do business with CARE Florida, cannot give them money, and cannot award them contracts, which CARE Florida don't receive any money from the state anyway. So that's not an issue. And but what it does do, it kind of sends this chilling effect. It creates this this accusation out there. So maybe some donors will be scared to donate. This is how you kind of starve an organization, because you cut off the funding. Maybe other groups that they normally ally with will shy away because they're not sure what would happen to them. Maybe CARE Florida or CARE collaborates with some other allies or some other groups that do receive some sort of funding from the state, and now those groups may be targeted, so they're worried. So I think that's why this a chilling effect. But in reality, he doesn't have the power to do this and will likely lose in court, and that's why he's calling on the legislators that when they start the new session in January to somehow come up with new laws that would solidify or strengthen his executive order, because on the surface of it, there are no current laws that back it up.
Yes, and that's what I fear, that, for instance, next they would go to after American Muslims for Palestine, or they will go to other...
Which they have been actually in Georgia, in Virginia and others, and they've lost lawsuits. Like different governors have targeted American, Muslims for Palestine's AMP. And DeSantis has targeted student groups on campuses before, Students for Justice in Palestine. A lot of it doesn't actually amount to much. Those groups are still operating on campus, but it's the chilling effect that it sends, and it somehow creates this atmosphere that Muslims are the enemy, that they don't belong here, and this puts the lives of Muslims in danger, because people that are watching this and watch what he's doing and respect DeSantis may actually believe that CARE is a real terrorist organization. What is the definition of a terrorist organization now? From what I know about CARE, they spend all their money in Florida and in America. They're not sending any money overseas, and they're not getting any money from overseas. So as far as I know, during my time there, and I think it's pretty much consistent today. And if they were, guess what? The federal government would have already moved in to shut them down. So does Ron DeSantis think that he knows something that the FBI doesn't, know? So come on, nobody that really knows what's going on is buying this. However, this is a misuse of the position, and then people that don't really know maybe will start thinking maybe Ron DeSantis has information that, and there's some truth to it.
I want to ask you a question, Ahmed, but I want to remind our listeners that they're listening to True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM. My co-host and I have been doing this show for more than 22 years, and it deals with American, Arab, Muslim issues and many others. I have a question for you. Do you know how many tourists come to the U.S. every year? Do you have any number in mind?
I think it's hundreds of millions, isn't it?
I think it's Like the maximum would be 75 million. And the reason I
Okay.
ask you, because I woke up this morning to a message on WhatsApp from a friend of mine saying, I'm not going to come to the US. And I'm thinking, why? And then she sent me this CBS News, which says that tourists from 42 countries will have to submit 5 years worth of social media history to enter the USA under a new Trump administration proposal. The plans, and I'm reading here from the news item, the plans to overhaul the electronic system for travel authorization, ISTA, the application process for not citizens to travel to the US for vacation or business would also make applicants provide additional information about themselves and their relatives. I have 1 million of my relatives.
Wow. Your relatives come in? Yeah, I mean,
Like
this is
my
like guilt by
I
association,
have
right?
like 24 cousins on my mom's side and 12 from my dad's side. I don't even remember their names, all of them. So, anyways, you have to give information about relatives and the emails that
Hmm.
they may have used for the past 10 years. And this is going to impact 42 countries. So you'd think, oh, okay, third world countries and those countries that Trump loves to label as garbage. But no, we're talking about the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Australia, Israel, Japan, New Zealand, South Korea.
Yeah,
I'm
these
not
are countries that have the visa waiver, right? That normally you can enter without needing a visa.
I mean,
A
not
lot
all.
of them, that's what I had read, or at least a big portion of them, because normally in the UK citizens can come to the US without a visa. And American citizens can also go to the UK without a visa historically. But now they're adding all these new rules. Now, Europeans coming to the US, even if they don't have a visa, they still have to fill out something called ESTA. It's like a electronic
Yeah.
form online to kind of just get permission to enter. But yeah, that's crazy. This is yeah, America's basic. If and guess what's going to happen? They will allow tourists from those countries, but guess what color they're going to be? Or,
Yeah.
you'd have to be like super rich. And, because on the same time, Trump has said, oh, the Trump gold card is finally here. And just the processing fee alone, the application fee
How
for
much?
the Trump card is like $15,000 just for the application, which I don't think is
So
refundable.
you might not be accepted, and but
Yeah, you still may not be accepted, but most likely, if you meet the criteria, you will. Yeah,
so
but
then what happens?
you have to invest $1 million in America and to get that. So who can afford $1 million? And you get and a $15,000 application, a very small group of people that have a lot of money, and they'll get what's called like basically the golden visa, which other countries already offer, and you have permanent residency in America. Normally, the type of visa you get is like for extraordinary people, like these are like super intelligent scientists or people have the specific skill or certain thinkers or, innovators. You want those kind of people in America, but no, now it's going to be also for people that are super wealthy that can afford $1 million and they can bring in their spouse and children.
Wow.
I have this thing queued up that made a lot of headlines. Trump basically saying that Somali migrants are garbage. And he's specifically been targeting a lot of the Somali community, which I think 40% of Somali Americans are in Minnesota. A lot of them congregated there. And there's a huge campaign against the Somalis, which, I think they think that Somalis in Minnesota are the base for Ilhan Omar. And before he started going after Somalis in general, Trump has been targeting and his supporters have been targeting Ilhan Omar for a long time. Ilhan Omar is a Somali immigrant and a refugee. She's a small woman,
Very
and she's
small.
always getting death threats. People are trying to hurt her, and it's just crazy that the amount of like the most powerful man in the world constantly targeting Ilhan Omar, who is a member of Congress and a Democrat. But here, the president himself is calling Americans.
But
They're not Somalis. These are
American-
American citizens of Somali background, and they've been
before
here for
before you
decades.
start, Ahmed, sorry, but I am looking at the website of statistics, and because they're gonna think that Somalis really are the ones who elected Ilhan Omar. 60% of her congressional district is white, and only 3% Somali origin. So who elected?
Yeah, that's true. Like, because the way that her district is, but I think we talked about this before, and I had asked her about, or I heard her or asked her about it, and she had said that when she first ran for office, almost all her support came from like white liberal people in her district, progressives, and she got very little support from the Somali community, which she even said by statistics, there's not that many of them in her district. The majority of her district are not Somalis.
And I'm looking here at the latest statement by Elon Musk, who loves to pick on her too, because I'm quoting here. He says, Ilhan Omar, who was literally voted into power, voted into Congress by a large group of people from Somalia who are in Minnesota, which is really far from Somalia. I mean, why
Such a lie. He's always sharing. I don't know. It's just
what's wrong with this guy?
It's so frustrating because all his tweets end up being like the most visible because he owns the platform.
It has like more than 200 million followers, and he's an immigrant himself. He's from South Africa. He's from Africa. He's from the same region of Somalia.
Yeah, people will make fun of him that he himself is an immigrant, and he himself is from Africa. The only difference is he's white, she's black.
My gosh, his racism, his white thing is so obvious.
It is out of control. And you know what's frustrating is when I see these guys like Elon Musk and other tech billionaires, they go to the Gulf countries, Muslim countries, begging for money, begging for investments. A lot of the investments into his Twitter, like to be able to buy Twitter, would not have been possible without Muslim money, like money of these Muslim monarchs and sovereign wealth funds. And okay, don't you, you're like one of the most racist, anti-Muslim people on the planet today, at least from your speech. And the things, it's not just Ilhan Omar. If you look at Elon Musk's tweets and stuff, every day he's got something that he's spreading against Muslims, whether here or abroad, that he's constantly sharing. And it's just mind-boggling. I don't know what his problem is, but in the same breath, he'll go to Saudi Arabia, he'll go to Qatar, he'll go to the UAE, trying to get them on board to fund his projects. But here's Trump's comments on Somalia that was played by PBS NewsHour.
Ripped off that state for billions of dollars, billions, every year, billions of dollars, and they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I can say that about other countries, too. I can say it about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. Our country's at a tipping point.
Yeah. So
he calls these people garbage. She's garbage. People in the Arab world, Ahmed, people who, my friends, they say sometimes we really have to struggle if this is AI and if it's real or not.
Yeah, but it's not. This is Trump. This is on, he said that.
And then some of them say, okay, maybe he just says these things to distract from his failures, or the fact that people are not talking about the Epstein files. But good luck really tourism and Disney and all these places, especially the national parks, because my husband's secretary's son graduated from Colorado, and his dream was to join the national parks and work there. But after the cuts, he's sitting at home looking for a job, getting really very frustrated. And so I was looking into the national parks. I had no idea that a huge number of the money they make, Ahmed, is from tourists who come from outside.
Especially in Florida. Yeah, I mean,
No,
definitely.
no, I meant even the national parks.
Oh, yeah.
Our famous national parks, the big
Right.
names in Colorado, Estes Park, and all these communities that thrive during the hiking season. I thought it was mainly from the US, but no, it turns out a lot of Europeans plan these trips, and good luck
And
to.
starting the new year, the prices for tickets are going to be, increased a lot for non-Americans.
What do you mean, inside the US or
Yeah,
coming?
there'll be different prices for these national parks, if you're an
Oh,
American or not an American. I didn't play the part where he says it's garbage, but here it is.
We have to rebuild our country. Our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other. And we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing.
Yeah.
this is really bad.
Yeah, I mean, this is the
Really
president of the United
bad.
States. Is very, and then he's saying, "I don't want him here." These are other Americans. Ilhan Omar is an American. The people in the Somalis, they're American.
Somalia is a beautiful country.
Yeah, but that's okay. But this is not. These are. It's like telling Elon Musk go back to he's American now, so you can't say that. And when he says we're at a tipping point, we can go one way or another. One of the things that I'm thinking is, okay, we're gonna either go brown or we're gonna go back to white. It's because they don't want people from Africa and these kind of to be polluting their country. I mean, this is very racist talk. And he's referring to there was a few people in like this. The context of all of this is there was a few people, and I think this was back during the pandemic. A few people from the Somali American community that were involved with some fraud. But during the pandemic, there are so many Americans involved in fraud, whether it's the PPP, and a lot of people were charged, and they had to go to jail. And these people, the same thing. The Somalis, the network they found, they were using specific funds that were designated to feeding people, and there were a few fraudsters that took advantage of it. That's against the law. Nobody in the Somali community came out and said, "Oh, that's allowed." But it's the same thing all over the country. There was all this because they were giving away money left and right without a lot of vetting, and some criminals did crime, and I think they got arrested. But that doesn't mean all the Somalis or somehow the Ilhan Omar is responsible for it. This is really racist and really unfortunate. But it's, again, Somalis happen to be, they're 99% Muslim. There are ones that are in Minnesota. And it's part of this Islamophobia, whether it's against the religion or the culture or the people. And the Muslim community feels like this, being extremely targeted. And it's not just, from like racist groups. Now you have government officials getting in on it. The most powerful and the richest people in America, like Elon Musk, are getting on it. They're spreading this misinformation. And none of it is being checked or verified, or stopped. There was a time when you couldn't share some of these things, but whenever it came to Muslims and Islamophobia, groups are always able to spread this kind of nonsense, and it's really unfortunate. A lot of Muslims are worried now. They're scared. Like, what are we going to do? They feel like they're under
Especially,
attack.
especially the young Ahmed, like your children, for example. I mean, you and I are adults, and I personally have lived in 5 different countries where I somehow encountered some sort of bigotry sometimes. And we have, we're adults, we have thick skin maybe after, especially after doing this show for 22 years. We're exposed, we deal with these issues, we confront them, we talk about them, we dissect them, we try to answer them, we lecture. But young people in college are not in the business of always knowing every single minute detail about the religion or the culture or the food or the politics, because he might be studying to become a mechanical engineer. Not every Muslim or every American of Arab descent knows history and culture and religion. So it's exhausting for them to be, they see their presidents talking about people who look like them as garbage and don't want them there. I mean, I don't know how your kids are dealing with this and young people are dealing with this, but it's tough. I can imagine how tough it is for them. And
Yeah, I mean, well, my kids specifically, they've been, they're familiar with the kind of work that I'm doing, and I talk about it, so they understand that this is not overly representative of the United States and the American people, but there are, specific groups. Most Americans don't necessarily harbor these views. However, there is obviously a percentage that's not familiar with Muslims that hold these views, and they happen to be very vocal. And a lot of the things that we see on social media are amplified by bots, by ads, by other campaigns. So there is this, it feels like a concerted effort around the country to provoke and drive wedges between Muslims and the rest of society, especially Christians, that somehow it would be like un-American to support the Muslim community or to deal with them. And so there's this campaign. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the funding that's behind it is coming, or at least partly, from foundations and groups that are in line with Israel. I mean, we've had experts on this show to talk about this in the past. Again, that's not reflective, because in my opinion, and I think you feel the same way, that we don't believe that Israel is synonymous with Judaism. So there's a lot of Jewish people that oppose what Israel is doing, a lot of Jewish people that respect Islam and Muslims, and even advocate for Palestine and speak out against what Israel is doing. However, the ones that are spending a lot of money to target Muslims, whether at the political level, Zohran Mamdani, Ilhan Omar, others, or even at the organization level, the largest Muslim organization, civil rights organization, CARE, or even just going after these Muslim students that were at USF that were praying, and these street preachers descended on them trying to intimidate and disrupt their prayer, and then live, put it on social media, and what happened in Dearborn. So a lot of this, there's, some overlap that's happening with this campaign. And even somebody like Alex Jones, this conspiracy theorist,
oh my God,
he's also posting so much against like ridiculous stuff about Muslims praying, and, that somehow they're trying to redefine that this prayer is a type of conquering America. This is not really a peaceful prayer. This is that this is Muslims' way to intimidate the public. You've seen that, I'm sure.
Yes, I have. I mean, he passes through my feed. I don't know why these people come. But one thing, I watched a report, Ahmed, because you know how much I follow X, is that because once Elon started this payment thing, you can get paid, so people tend to put some inflammatory statements, and then when you answer and get mad and say no or yes, this person ends up getting money from
So actually it pays to hate
yeah,
on
it
Twitter.
pays to have bigotry.
Yeah, okay. Well, Samar, we'll leave it at that, but I don't want to leave it on a hateful note. I think you're doing good work out there, and we're run out of time. One picture that I'm seeing that I'm, surprised at, Marjorie Taylor Greene is standing with Medea Benjamin, the leader of the leftist group Code Pink, and Medea is wearing a T-shirt that says "I love Palestine liberation." And Marjorie Taylor Greene, who announced that she's resigning from Congress, is standing with her and smiling. Yeah. So I don't know what this world is coming to, realignments taking place. But that wraps up our time here at True Talk. This has been WMNF Tampa. The Scoop is next. We'll see you at the same time, same place, right here next Thursday, 12 o'clock at noon. This